with the best father and son team on the internet. It's time for Homie and the Dude.
What is up, everyone? This is Homie and the Dude, the father and son TTRPG and MMA podcast, and we are here with the mighty and powerful B. Dave Walters.
That's the dozens and dozens of my fans going wild there. Yeah.
That was the greatest response to one of Tom's intros I think we've had. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. How are you doing today, man? How are you doing?
Great. No, fantastic. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I think there is a surprising overlap between the MMA and geek communities, and a lot of times people don't talk about it, or they're almost embarrassed to talk about it, to be like, you like both of those things too? And it's like, yeah, of course I like both of those things. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Looking forward to actually get into some of that with you. Quickly, though, I know we spoke about this before the show, and we'll just blast through this to get it out the way, and then get into the fun stuff, because I actually have a really fun question that I want to ask you to start this whole thing off. But obviously, there's been some controversy and stuff going down with the Wizards of the Coast, WotC, and the OGL stuff. And for us, it's something that we're dealing with as third-party creators. We write stuff, we do actual plays, we also do this podcast, and various forms of that. From the leak draft, we're going to be affected. So it's something that's been weighing on our hearts, and we, like you, have been waiting to see what the actual document says, and have been just kind of sitting back and just kind of wanting to see where this kind of leads and what's going on before we kind of choose our direction and the direction of Homie and the Dude going forward in the coming years as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people don't realize my actual background is business. That's what I did for a living, marketing. I was a marketing exec for a few companies, ran my own businesses, and was playing games for fun, and transitioned into this creatively. So I kind of I have a different view on all of this. The whole thing, it's very unfortunate. It is one giant unforced error. It is a PR masterclass in what not to do, and I think the whole thing's just really sad. I mean, I know we through the magic of time and space, we recorded this a little before the people are hearing it, so there's always a chance that something else is broken and is caught on fire in the meantime. It's just sad. It's been handled very poorly, and at this point I just want to read the document, see what it actually says, and make business decisions from there. But emotionally, it's just been, it would have been difficult to do worse, this rollout. It would have been difficult to do worse.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong in a lot of that at all, and I think we stand with you very much. And emotionally, it's been a hard one. I said to Tom literally before this, with Wizards of the Coast making a statement, I was reading this, I was like, I haven't slept good for like a week and a half now. Like I've been just like feeling this in ways that I didn't know my body like even could, and just a super weird one, and perfectly. Leads me into my transition of my first thing that I want to ask you.
That was smooth.
And feeling things that you're not quite sure, like why your body's doing that and whatnot. You often talk about spirituality, and I know it's a big part of a lot of what you do. What do your spirituality practices look like? You mentioned to us that that you're going to the gym, things like that. What kind of spirituality practices and wellness stuff do you do in your life to maintain that kind of thing?
I'm like, all right, let's condense 3,000 years of human introspection into about 40 seconds. I used to. You were correct. Spirituality is very important to me. I was a religion minor in college. I was a nationally syndicated columnist for BeliefNet for many years. A lot of people don't know that. If you Google B. Dave Walters and BeliefNet, they're still out there in the ether. And a lot of those things still inform a lot of the things that I say and do today. My own practice is very personal. I guess to give the most concrete example, I meditate twice a day, for instance, right when I wake up, right when I go to bed. You got our homie Sid behind you in the painting there. Mindfulness is a big part of my life, just because I realize things happen so quickly. I mean, I've got kids, and my kids are 12 and 15. Tom, I'm sure you remember when he was the size of a football, and then now you blink and he's here. And your only defense against that is being able to just stop and be present in the moment, and and enjoy this thing, enjoy what's happening, enjoy what is. So a heavy emphasis on mindfulness and presence, and I think the last thing is philosophically, stoicism is very near and dear to my heart.
Awesome.
I got a picture of my homie Marcus Aurelius right here. Marcus is always with me there, to try and help keep me on the straight and narrow. And I sort of came into stoicism the reverse way. I came across the meditations of Marcus Aurelius at a particularly dark time in my life, and as I was reading it, a lot of the things he was saying jived with how I already saw the world. It wasn't like I had to try, you know what I mean? To be like, oh, I like chocolate, but let me see the virtues of vanilla. It's like, no, I like chocolate. And then here was this kind of school of thought that was like, chocolate's pretty good, but have you thought about making milkshakes and cookies and cheesecake? And here's the things you can do with chocolate. And so, it's kind of helped keep me tethered, helped keep me grounded, and just sort of get through the buffs and vicissitudes of life. And let me just say already in advance, if we're about to talk about spirituality and D&D and MMA all in one conversation, you've already won as the greatest interview of all time. That's
That's where we're headed.
Boom! Let's go, baby.
That is.
Before we circle out of spirituality, just want to
you talk on mindfulness and meditation. I'll do stoicism because I got a bit on that. So you go first. You go first. Go for it.
And then we'll double team the MMA stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
My body's ready.
So mindfulness is something that I found late in life as well. And but the first retreat I went to was in 2014. And it was really almost like a survival mechanism for me. I was just really struggling with, not with the outer image of Tom was successful, healthy, all these other things, but inside things were, and including my relationship with Bodhi, everything was kind of crumbling. My relationship with my wife Tracy, my own big empty hole inside of me that just could not and would not fill with anything that I did. So I actually took mindfulness up as it wasn't like a solution that I was looking for. It was a challenge, like another tick in the box for me to be amazing. And what I ended up finding on about the fourth day of the 10-day retreat was that I was an asshole. I was a real asshole, and I had been an asshole for years. And this perspective, so the thing for mindfulness for me is I had a perspective that I could never, ever actually tap into without mindfulness. And it was a third-party perspective of Tom and Tom's behavior and how Tom would relate to people. And it was so sad. I remember crying on like the walking trails in between the sitting and walking meditation. The first thing that I did when I came home was apologize.
Yeah. Heavy. It was a good 30-minute apology as well.
Yeah, and since then I've had a pretty regular practice, very much like yours as well, and it is medicine for me.
I love the idea of being like, I'm gonna be so humble. I'm gonna show them how mindful I could be. It's a strange thing because there's two massive competing forces in that. Our mind does not default towards mindfulness. I think it's a common misconception that people think your brain is supposed to make you happy, but it's not. Your brain is supposed to keep you alive. Mm-hmm. So that's why it is constantly trying to flag the, ooh, what about this? Ooh, what about that? Ooh, what about this? Ooh, what about that? In pulling you away from your center. And then double that by the fact that the world wants that too. Attention is the only currency now. And there is near infinite competition to get us to stop and pay attention to a thing and to pull us out from something. Every chime, beep, and vibration from your phone, every pop-up ad, every notification, everybody being like, "Ooh, this is a thing. What do you think? You have to comment right now on it." That has become the pace of the world, and that is very antithetical to what our souls need. And I will say, if somebody wants a crash course in mindfulness, and I don't mean to oversell it, I just mean you can get the experience fairly quickly. There's a video on YouTube called A Guided Meditation Through Your Interiors. It's a guy named Genpo Roshi who perfected something called the big mind and big heart process, and it's about 3 hours long. And I say that to people, and their eyes begin to roll back in their head, and I'm like, you watched all 3 Lord of the Rings movies. You can find 3 hours once, and you like, I don't feel bad for you, but it's about 3 hours, and you need to be largely undisturbed, and you just go along with it. It's not really a guided meditation. He just sort of asks you some questions, and in the process of asking these questions and sort of peeling back the layers of the onion, the process is basically he introduces you to those voices inside of you. The same voices that when I just said that, you were like, what voices? Those voices. Because so much of you isn't you. I mean, like Tom, so much of what was driving you, I mean, this isn't supposed to become a psychoanalysis of you now, and I'm sure you've done a lot of this work yourself, but a lot of those things that were driving you to do those things that you thought were important, to have financial success, to have a successful career, to be physically healthy, all these things, a lot of that was put into you from externalized forces, and you just been carrying them with you this whole time. And so a lot of the process of this work is peeling that back. And that process in particular, it's a guided a guided tour of your interiors. If you just Google Big Mind, you'll see some short videos, but you'll see one that's like a big old chunky long one. It's the chunky long one that I'm talking about. Helps you experience that kind of firsthand. And I highly recommend it. I do the whole thing over again about 2 or 3 times every year just to experience it again. That was wonderful stuff.
That's super.
It's adapted from Zen Buddhism.
Oh wow! Okay. That's super interesting.
So not to belabor this, but Zen Buddhism as well is particularly interested in mindfulness and movement, and so having mindfulness in your life, not just when you're sitting on a stool or in a meditation retreat or that time, but really to incorporate it into your daily activity, your even, from when you wake up all the way through to mundane exercises like brushing your teeth or taking a shower or even going to the toilet. Like everything is meant to be like in the moment. And so that resonates with me. And I'm not sure how much of that you've taken over to some of your performance stuff. So, being in the moment is pretty important when you're improving, when you're playing off of someone on a live stream or in company of them. But how much of that do you attribute to your mindfulness?
Great question.
It's absolutely vital in the sense of being able to freely step out of yourself and not be afraid of what you are going to find there, and not being afraid of being vulnerable or perhaps looking silly or making a fool of yourself or making a mistake. When I'm playing those roles, be it as a character at the time or the NPC that I'm embodying in the moment, I'm them. Like it's when I put that mask on, I am that person. I'm not even thinking, what would the Xanathar do? Like, no, I'm just the Xanathar. And it so happens that I can switch it pretty quickly. But it's funny because there's been times that I've been doing performances and I was in character and someone said something to Dave and I truly didn't know who they were talking about. Like, it took a second. I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm Daniel Day-Lewis, walking around on set for 6 months as Bill the Butcher. But I mean, like, even that like 5 to 10 second, like, yes. What? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I just need to take this hat off a second and put that other hat back on.
Yeah. You meant the other guy. Yeah. So I think it has been helpful in that. But I would also submit, I think one of the strengths of TTRPGs is it allows us to face things about ourselves that are true that we might not have admitted to ourselves yet. And a lot of times putting on that mask is a way to tell the truth. So sometimes that pain or unresolved issues or trauma or just things you just haven't faced and admitted about yourself. Like you just hadn't admitted you were an asshole, you know? Sometimes your character can realize they're an asshole in such a way that you're like, oh, oh dear. You know, and can lead to those very clear awakenings. So it's almost like it's almost like it cuts both ways. It's like being very, very present can be helpful, but sometimes your unresolved things can bubble up in a way that is also very powerful.
Do you know what I think, such a big part of that is emotional memory and things like that when it comes to acting. And, like you said, accidentally tap into moments. Like, I've had, multiple players, if you, in our AP stream, my mother plays an awesome character and has a dark history, like a heavy history, that, she's taken inspiration from Inigo Montoya, from Princess Bride, and it's really darkened it up and made it really kind of amazing. And when she has like moments where she's talking about this history and she like breaks down, I know she's going to places about her brother that she lost when she was younger, her father that she lost, and I know she's going to those places to pull on those emotions, and I can see her dealing with some of that. And I know you do the same when you talk about your uncle, your dead uncle in game, and things like that. And I know like it's one of those things that really does draw on that. And I think it's beautiful. I also know loads of people like the it feels like one that I hear a lot about. I was going to say the classic, but it's not the classic. It's like one that I feel like I hear a lot about is people who are in the closet still, or not realizing they're in the closet, then, exploring, gender and sexuality through TTRPG, and then, discovering things as they go. And I think, that's such an amazing and beautiful thing. And I love that the two intersect in that way. And also I think, to circle back to Stoicism a little bit, that is, again, fits into the TTRPG thing. I feel like as a DM, that's a mind frame that is really important, being unaffected by things and being able to use logic and things to solve the problems in front of you rather than acting on emotion. And, a player does this and it annoys you as a DM, or, so on and so forth. And being able to be, centered and think about these things without emotion and more with logic, and then put the emotion back into them, super powerful. Like that's a skill that's like unbelievably like, useful. And I think a lot of actors should look at things like that as well. And I in my head while you guys were talking about, I was like, I wonder if that's why like a lot of like LA, like Hollywood is very like, ooh, like spirituality kind of thing, whether people are like doing the mindfulness route to help their acting, or whether that's just pure coincidence because it's LA.
Well, I can speak to this with some authority because I'm in LA and I'm an actor. Let me not be, I don't mean to say this uncharitably, but it's true. A lot of people seek fame to fill a void. There is something missing, and they think if they pour enough applause and maybe some money and attention into it, it will fill that hole, and it won't. So you get out here and there's a lot of needy people, and there are some real valid solutions to that. And then people like, hey, maybe I can help you. And that becomes the trendiness of the mindfulness and the trendiness of these practices. Of course, I'm not in the hearts and minds of all of these people. I don't know who is and isn't serious, but it is almost like a lot of wounded people show up. And then you get a lot of people that are purveyors of bandages. Also, pardon my French, a lot of those people are purveyors of bullshit too, and very much taking advantage of injured, needy people. You know, so it is not so all true. Altruism. But then, like for instance, a dedicated yoga practice helps your body a lot, which helps your career. So it's, I think that's kind of why you end up there. And this is also an arena where, feelings and emotions and mental health and a lot of that stuff gets dragged to the forefront like a lot. Like I'm sure if we went to Detroit, what's left of the automotive industry, a lot of those line workers would benefit from a yoga practice too. It's just that environment, doesn't really lend itself to it.
Doesn't it? It's about having that nurturing space, and I think TTRPG is very much a space where it nurtures a lot of that stuff. Well, I say that as long as your table is good, as long as the safety tools are in place, all that kind of stuff is there, because, we have one of our employees literally at the moment was talking to me the other day and was like, oh my God, I'm playing D&D with this group and we've got a rules lawyer who's a nightmare. One of them's metagame. She's like, the DM just doesn't give a shit. Like, she was like, it's just a shit show, bro. And she was like, oh, and we had no session 0. I was like, Bex, that's going to be a problem from the get-go. Like, I was like, that's already a red flag. Like, come on, Bex, you're better than this kind of thing. And then I think, it's one of those things that if it's safe, then you're going to have a great time. You're going to be able to, test the limits of your own personality, the limits of your own expression. And I think that's a beautiful space to be in. I'm going to do another wonderful segue here into turning away from TTRPG, and then we'll come back a little bit later. But I think another space that does that and encompasses the whole being present, spirituality, the whole, again, stoicism, thinking with logic, is martial arts. And I think, something we love about it, Tom and I speak about it, it's art. When we watch an MMA fight, we're watching chess and Picasso mixed together, like, in front of us. Do you know what I mean? And it's one of those things of, like, we love that. And I think one of the reasons we love it, and I remember, like, as a kid, if I was having a hard time and, like, I, was doing, like, a kata or whatever, and I needed to get out, like, some emotion, like, that would often come out in those moments and things like that. Again, because it was a safe space where I could express myself, and I was in the moment. I was having to be present. I was learning, all the things that I feel like you do in TTRPG. Like, I know you partake in martial arts and have belts of various colors and degrees and powers and whatnot. Can you tell just us a little bit about your martial arts background, and also just your opinion on how that kind of fits in your life and everything else, man?
I will say a heavy bag is an excellent therapist. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to spend 30 minutes with a heavy bag and still be sad afterwards.
That's true.
There's a reason why these art forms were originally created by monks in ascetics. Well, I say originally created. I mean, they were originally created by the first monkey that picked up a rock and hit another monkey. That was the original creation. But being refined to the methods that we see and understand today, especially with Shaolin Kung Fu and things of that matter, it came through ascetics that were using it as much as a tool for mastery and self-perfection as they were for self-defense. It is, you learn something about yourself and you learn something about another human being when you fight them. It is difficult to explain in a way that people who haven't done it don't know. And they think you can get to the end of this knockdown, drag out brawl and be all puffy and bloody and stuff. And they're hugging each other and nearly crying. And people are like, I don't understand it. And I'm like, you really don't. Actually, there's a connection and a kinship with another human in those moments that I haven't found in many other ways. I have black belts in Shaolin Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and then I just trained in a bunch of other stuff. Kempo Karate, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 5 Animals Kung Fu, 5 Families Kung Fu, Bagua, Tsingy, like pretty much anything you can think of. I've done at least a little bit of it.
That was a big list. That was a huge list. I was just like, oh shit. Okay, here we go.
On the internet, it's just the Shaolin and the Tai Chi. I didn't know you were in the BJJ and the Muay Thai and all that stuff. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, but those things, I mean, it's not. I didn't go like win any tournaments. You know what I mean? Like I'm not some undefeated street fighter. You know what I mean? That I'm like, yes, I use secret techniques to fight 50 men in the streets. I'm like, no, I didn't. Okay, so don't want to oversell it. Back right when I finished school, well, this is a spirituality podcast, so I'll tell you my actual origin story. There's been a few times in my life that God or the universe, or however you want to describe it, has spoken to me. And when I say spoken to me, I mean spoken to me like we're talking words, not just felt a tug or something of what I should have. No, I heard. I was walking across the college campus, and at the time, I was really into Wu-Tang Clan. I mean, I'm still into Wu-Tang Clan. I got my newest Wu-Tang shirt over there. Right.
If you like combat and you like nerd stuff, you can't not be into Wu-Tang. Let's be real.
Well, Wu was my gateway, right? So I would listen to Wu-Tang Clan. If you're not familiar with their work, they sample a lot of kung fu movies. So I'd find the movies they'd sample, and then I went and I watched those movies, and I kind of got into the movies, right? And I was walking across campus one day, and something said to me, as clear as I'm talking to you, you should train in kung fu.
Yeah.
And I literally said back to it, I was like, well, I don't have time because I'm in school, but I'll do it after I graduate. And it said, okay, do it after you graduate. I was like, okay. Well, that was my burning bush moment. You know what I mean? Like the pillar from heaven. I mean, but that's what happened. So I graduated in May. I started training in June. I just loved it. I mean, I'd done some like Taekwondo when I was a kid, but I mean, everybody did back in the 80s. But that was kind of my first real exposure to it. And it turns out I was pretty good at it. And then I reached a point where I kind of had 3 different options. I'd been offered the chance to have my own Kung Fu school under my master in Atlanta. I thought about going into MMA because this is the early 2000s, and it became clear like this was going to be a thing. You know, like I mean, I'd been watching the UFC since the 90s, but it was clear like, oh, this is something. You know, or I could have become a bodyguard for my friend's band Evanescence because they started blowing up at the time. And
what is happening right now? This is crazy.
I grew up with those guys in Arkansas. Yeah, still friends of mine. So my thought process at the time was I could always come back and do the Kung Fu school. And the more things I've done in the world, quite frankly, the more prestigious it'll be. I truly, truly enjoy fighting. I love it. But I'm vain. And I didn't want my nose all crumpled and like cauliflower ear and stuff. You know what I mean? I was like, ugh. So I was like, let me go do this bodyguard thing because that's the most time dependent. I have no idea how long that's going to be an option. And then I will decide if I want to do those other 2. In the process of doing that, that's what brought me out here to LA. I'd wanted to be a writer the whole time. I've got a degree in English. That was my ambition. And then doors started to open out here, and that's the way it went. But I've been training the whole time because I love it and I enjoy it. And that's what happened.
That's absolutely wow.
I will say, I guess for your listeners who may not know me, so I'm like 6'9", which is 2.05 meters and 120 kilos. So it's
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know you were that tall.
Dude, I didn't know you were that tall either. Jesus Christ. That's huge.
Well, it's funny because people are like, you're so big. Why do you need to know martial arts? I'm like, because anybody that wants to start something with me either knows something themselves or is crazy. Be ready. Either way. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's some solid ass reasoning right there. That's some solid reasoning right there. Couple of things. So first of all, I definitely want to talk a little bit about Shaolin. Just also like all the martial arts that you named are, awesome martial arts. I've done Kempo karate for me. I was a champion of Spain in Kempo for many years. That was one of my like big things for martial arts. And so I love, karate, and then, Muay Thai is a gorgeous sport. What an amazing, like brutal but gorgeous sport. Kung Fu has I love the variety of style where it feels like, Muay Thai is a very locked in, like everyone's kind of doing very similar kind of style, where then you look at Kung Fu and it's like, wow, you're not going to find 2 Kung Fu martial artists that are, the same, which is really cool. I want to ask kind of two things. First one though is within the realm of Kung Fu, because as fans of like MMA and we, watch a lot of, heavy martial arts events. We also do post-fight interviews and things like that. And so, we're at all of this, what I guess in the world of martial arts is called, high impact, real martial arts kind of things. And then you have people, and I'm sure you've heard people like Joe Rogan and whatnot going on at length about some fake martial arts that are out there. And I know one of the pools that gets muddied a lot is Kung Fu, because, you know, there is so much variety and there is so much like air for that kind of stuff to happen. It's a little less hard to kind of weed that out. Have you experienced any of that kind of like, you know, like wushu magic stuff? Like anything like that in your time of practicing Kung Fu? Have you gone into any of those situations?
I can spot them from a mile away, and I live to defang those things.
Yeah.
Here's the reality. Let me tell anybody who is an aspiring martial artist that you need to know one thing. Your teacher needs to know how to box. 30 style sweet science box. Show you how to throw a jab, a hook, a cross, and an uppercut effectively. And then show you how to defend yourself against those things. Like Kempo, a lot of the Kempo forms, man, where you're like, oh, I'm going to step back and block the hook like this. It's like, no, you're not. You aren't. Like this, this doesn't work. It doesn't. No. Doesn't. I wish it did. Nobody wants it to more than me, but it won't. And I used to have to the thing I would do to my friends to open their eyes is I would say, hey, check this out. I'm gonna take this fist, I'm gonna punch right past your head, right? This fist right here, right past your head. You do that block and stop it. All right? You ready? You know, and they never can. Ever. And I'm like, you're not gonna. Yes, and then especially after the first one comes, here comes the second one. So you need to have a root in the reality of the biomechanics and the physiology of the human body and just what it's going to do, right? And boxing is that. You know, just 30 style Western boxing is that. Now, that being said, on the other side of that is something that I hear people say a lot of the times that I find absolutely infuriating is that Tai Chi is not a martial art. Tai Chi is not for fighting. And I'm like, well, Tai Chi means the grand ultimate fist. It was like the greatest martial art. When you have some hippie in the park who has never thrown a punch in their life that is showing it to you, no, it's not at all. It is it's true. It is almost like a master class for combat. So it is almost like I feel everyone should experience that core. If I had to teach anyone to fight, my children, when I taught them to fight, everyone should learn to box. Just because it is the easiest, most intuitive way to defend yourself that is going to get you out of the most problems. Boxing in and of itself is not an end-all be-all. Of course, things get complicated when grappling enters the equation. The fact that if you punch a human being, you are probably going to break your hand. You know, these bones don't deal well with these bones. But if you've been put into a situation where you have to, I'm like, I'll trade my broken hand for your broken jaw. Okay, deal. But then you can build on that, the things where here's how you can actually apply the concepts of Kempo that Mr. Parker was trying to teach. Here's how you can apply the concepts of Kung Fu, where now I have the space and the timing that I can get out of the way, and I know this foot right here can reach your liver, and I will put you away. That's when it's useful. There's a place here in Burbank, and I used to live next to it, and I would throw up in my mouth every time I walk by. Was the sign on the door said Shaolin Taekwondo. And I'm like, that's not a thing! That's not a thing!
That's Chinese and Japanese culture, and you're mashing all kinds of problems here, dude. There's history there, brother. You can't do that.
Stirring in Korean, and it's like every time I'd walk by and I'd see the dude, part of me wanted to go just full kung fu movie, break the sign. But there'd be kids in there, and the kids are having a good time, and I'm like, okay, and it's like I feel bad when a lot of MMA guys look down their nose at the traditional stuff, and it's like, to me, the traditional stuff. The MMA is the MCU. It's action movies. It's Thor. It's Captain America. It's spectacle. I love spectacle. But the traditional stuff is Shakespeare. And there's things Shakespeare can say that the MCU cannot say. And those things are valid, But to bracket that, learn to box, kids.
Thanks for watching this episode. We really appreciate you supporting Homie and the Dude.
Please hit us with the Holy Trinity, like our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram. Just search @Homie and the Dude. It all really helps. I love that. And for a good second there, I genuinely thought we were about to hear your villain arc as well, as you enter the dojo and are like, I challenge everyone! Just blasting kids out of the way.
yeah. I'm like, it's just Order 66 in this piece. Yeah, I'm like, come back for revenge when you've learned something, child. Yeah. Right.
Oh my God. But no, I fully agree with you. And I think there's so few people who put it like that. I think that's, if ever there's someone who's thinking about martial arts, that was such a beautiful, we've had fighters on who haven't said it that good. Like, Jesus, that was like very well put about
I will say, I will build on it as well a little bit. So the striking is absolutely fundamental. And whether you're in the octagon, in the UFC, if the higher level striker you are, like Israel Adesanya or even Alexander Volkanovski, these guys,
or even traditional striker Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
Yeah, so from his karate background. But you see the feint game, the boxing brings a timing and a rhythm that is super, super important to the martial arts. And so then if you can build in different components, like, if I can take someone down with my wrestling and then I can build in some jiu-jitsu or I can defend, those types of things, then you do have a foundation that it's pretty protective out in the wild, pretty able to defend yourself.
The original thesis of the Ultimate Fighting Championship is, people were like, ooh, it's human cockfighting or whatever, but it wasn't. The original thesis of the Ultimate Fighting Championship is, let's find out what is the ultimate martial art. Yeah. And the answer is there wasn't one.
Yeah.
BJJ jumped out front at first, but it proved it's still fairly easy to counter. What is it? Hickson Gracie's quote, if you're a black belt and you get punched in the face, you're a brown belt. You get punched in the face again, you're a purple belt.
It's beautiful.
It's accurate.
Yep, definitely.
Well, let's talk about this is I'm going to try my own version of a transition. It might not be quite as smooth as yours. But if we use,
I believe in you.
If we use the term villain arc, that's taken us a little bit more towards fantasy and D&D and a TTRPG. And what I'm really interested about is something you said at the very beginning of this podcast, which is you come from a business background. And from what I've seen in you, Dave, is you have been able to, from your public persona, build in both an authenticity in your D&D, TTRPG, live streaming, whether you're a player or a DM, but you've also had a really interesting way to brand yourself. So, and I saw in your player course, your 14-day player course, there's a lot of stuff in there on how can we, if we really want to take this serious, like how can we put ourselves out, how can we develop ourselves first and then put ourselves out there in a way that promotes both our playing but also our persona. So yeah, you have anything, especially around the course? That was really interesting how you added that as a part of the course.
Before I do this, you want to see a real smooth transition?
Go on.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's wonders of technology. Part of me was like, I'm going to do that at the end, and I was like, I'll forget. I'll miss the game. Yeah, so everyone who fancies themselves a professional, and let me tell you how I define a professional. A professional is you've been compensated to do the thing. That's it. If you're a graphic designer and someone tossed you $20 to make their wedding invitations, if you are a photographer and a friend of yours, toss you a couple of dollars to take some Instagram photos for them, once you've been compensated to do the thing, you are a professional. Now it's a matter of scale. To be paid more money to do more things. And if you are a professional, you absolutely must be mindful of branding. Branding and reputation are interchangeable. Now, What I will say is, again, I said I was being vague about the WotC kerfluffle, but what they've done is they've damaged their reputation, which means they've damaged their brand. And it may or may not be irreparable. You know, we'll see to what extent they continue swallowing their leg. We'll decide whether or not it's irreparable. But that's
Beautiful
what they've
image.
done. Yeah, you know, they've damaged their reputation. And so when I talk to people that are trying to get ahead in this space, the question I always ask, and I did bring up in the program, which is I did 14-day player, 14-day DM. You can find both on the undisputedacademy.com plug. When people think of you, what do they think? Because the two things you always need to be mindful of is who knows you and what do they know you for. Like, people talk about, like, oh, it's just who you know. People that complain about that are lazy people. Because, yes, there is a component of that. Unquestionably there is. But what happens, and I've seen this so many times, and I've been on both sides of this, is when it comes time to hire somebody here in the Hollywood side or the higher end of the streaming business, it's like, we need a new cameraman. Okay, get Joe. Joe had a bad experience with Joe. Really? Yeah. What about Tammy? Tammy's dope. All right, get Tammy. That's it. There's not interviews. There's not resumes. There's not let's go check their reels. It is top of mind awareness of who is and is not legit and who is and is not easy to work with, right? So you have to decide when you're putting things out into the marketplace, make sure everything is analogous to who you want to be known as. My following on social media would be much larger if I just picked one thing or just talked about that one thing. Or if I didn't ever talk about politics, for instance, or I didn't, sprinkle in some stuff about MMA. I realize only a fraction of my audience cares about this clip of Hamzat Shemaev ragdolling somebody.
Dude, I love you. First of all, it's so rare that we get to
I'm literally, dude, it's beautiful.
How many people would you guess out of 1,000 people that profess themselves as TTRPGers, D&Ders,
could say Hamzat Shemaev ragdolling someone and using ragdoll dope. Oh, that's brilliant, dude.
We're kindred spirits, bro.
Absolutely. Well, but I made a conscious choice that in my social media spaces, I was going to be me.
Yeah.
And I was going to talk about what's important to me. If I were doing brand consulting, I would say very different things. You know what I mean? Again, especially, I know for sure the political stuff is costing me people. Quite frankly, I don't care because I don't want the people the political stuff has cost me. But I also know the contrary is true. If I only did the political stuff and not the geek stuff, my following also would have been better. Would be higher. You know what I mean? So I kind of get the people that can kind of either understand all these worlds or at least tolerate all these worlds, right? But that's a conscious choice I make. So people in this space, you got to decide who it is you're talking to. And the answer is never everybody. People think I'm talking to everybody. It's like, no, you're not. Trying to talk to everybody is the same as trying to talk to nobody. Yeah. So get an idea in your head. And when I talk about your target, it doesn't mean you're talking only to them, but primarily who are you talking to? If you're like, I'm trying to talk to girls that are in high school and college and kind of like transitioning into the world and finding out who they are. I'm talking to men who are maybe over 40, can't quite hit it as hard as they could in the gym and are kind of trying to redefine themselves. I'm looking for millennials who are stuck living at home and are vaguely kind of resentful about it, and I kind of want to make them laugh. Just get an idea of the face of the person you're talking to. And then the content you post, both the content you create and even the content you share, has got to be something that person finds interesting. And if you are essentially always setting these honey traps for people, they will organically and innately kind of come in and enter into your ecosystem and start interacting with you. It's it helps because I mean I actually feel this way. But I mean, for instance, if I suddenly started, I don't know, and I do not feel this way, internet. But if I started posting like free Andrew Tate, the agents of the Matrix came after Andrew Tate, you know, that's
Dear God.
that's not my audience. That's not who people know me as, and it's not who I am. Internet. It was an example. Stay with me.
Do not clip that little clip.
I hear the outrage coming towards the keyboard with some people, you know. But you know that's not the community or the presence that I have intentionally cultivated. And what I will tell you is also that is not just your sword in the sense that when people are looking for people for projects or whatever, and they know that's your thing, that it is advantageous for you, but it is also your shield that when people try and come at you, the people know who you are. Yeah. And that is your defense. And because people will try and come at you, especially if you have any standing. I mean, flies are drawing the honey. What can I say? You know. So.
Do you know what? I so much. It's crazy. I feel like we pick them so good. I feel like we're so lucky with who we like talk to have on this podcast. It's crazy. So we are very much in a similar space of, you know, we don't have one area that we're doing. We make dice, you know, we write TTRPG supplements. We, you know, we're a family. We, you know, we do actual plays. We also do MMA content. We do UFC streams. We also do like post-fight.
I mean, there's two sides to that. There's two sides to that. We have an analogy. So the analogy is, are you an arrow that pierces through vertically one area, or are you a snowplow that has a lot of hedge, but you know your progress is more methodical, and you have options, and you're also possibly serving a lot more of your passions instead of one thing that could burn you out.
And I think that's to what Dave said. You know, it's that point of like, you know, if you're smart about how you do it, if you're like you said, God. By the way, I just learned so much from what you just said. It's crazy. That's another one of my favorite things about these podcasts is how much I learned. It's great. I feel like the whole thing you said about, you know, thinking about who the face is of what you're doing and, you know, working for that and, you know, considering that. And then, you know, and dude, the whole thing about, you know, the people, we saw like a thing of like, I can't remember what the full funnel was, but I know like the bottom section of the funnel was people who advocate for you. And it was like,
evangelists, yep.
Yeah. And it being like, you know, these people are going to be the ones that are going to support you, and that being the defense and the offense in both cases. And that was a really interesting thing. And you just reiterating that just like really like rang true with me. I fully agree, man.
Well, if I would give a piece of advice, both to you all or anyone who wants to occupy multiple spaces, and you all may already have an answer for this question. If you're going to do a lot of things, you can do a lot of things, but you do need a logical through line that will sort of keep you rooted. You know, for me, my logical through line, and I don't say this often because it sounds more grandiose than I intend, but it's true. My through line is to help reduce human suffering. That's why I do what I do. So, if a story I tell helps take your mind off your problems for a little while, a joke I post, an actual play, a screenplay I write, an article I write that makes you feel like maybe you're not so weird, all of the seemingly disconnected things I do, all plug right back into that. Everything I do is trying to make a person feel better.
Yeah.
And so when I have that logical framework, it's very easy to hang things on that. And it's very easy to be like, I just shared this with you because I thought it would make you smile. Here's a 30-second clip of a baby laughing, you know? And a lot of times I think to myself consciously, I'm like, well, it's about 6 o'clock on the West Coast. It's about 9 o'clock on the East Coast. People are coming home and unwinding and stressed out. Now is when I'm going to post that cute cat video. I usually try every night. I usually try to post something funny or sweet right before I go to bed. Like that. I intentionally, I'm like, here's the last thought of the day. You know, something good. That I'm like, let that tumble around the algorithm until I wake up in the morning. And I might wake up spitting that hot fire, pending what's going on in the world. But I try to end on it up, because I'm thinking to myself, obviously I'm not so vain as to think that, the whole world is checking my Twitter feed before they go to sleep, but this might be the last thing they see.
Yeah.
And if they're like, oh, that puppy and that duck are adorable, okay, that one person eased off to bed a little bit easier.
I love it, man.
So yeah, so and there's a thousand things that you could do that could be that through line. And like I said, I'm not gonna put you on the spot to say it. You may already have it, but if you don't have it, I would thoroughly encourage you to be able to articulate in a sentence, what we do is blank. And that manifests as dice and TTRPGs and talking to fighters and but as long as you have that central core, it will help you. It will help you tactically, and it will help the audience, because when you're always consistent with that thing, even subconsciously it'll resonate. Versus, even you take something like Amazon, which has literally everything, but Amazon's thing was, we're the everything store.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the place I can get everything. Dig it. Because otherwise you're like, wait, let me get this straight. I can buy a pacemaker and diapers and a baseball bat and what?
and a fish.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So,
okay.
I think
dude, that's such fuck, dude. Like, I honestly, thank you. Like, I just appreciate you saying all this. Like, I think a lot of people need to hear this, Tom and I included. And, I'm sure, like we always do after these podcasts, we'll be sat talking about it for the next, hour, 20 minutes or so.
But if you could consolidate our thing, it is a father and son, and it's a project that, and from one lens, it looks like, oh man, they have an amazing relationship, but we have been through a journey in our relationship. But we have tended to get to a place where we're working together on a venture, and it's we don't know what the outcome is going to be on the venture, but it is something that we both are really interested in, passionate about, curious about. And so when we interview, for instance, Arnold Allen, the fifth-ranked featherweight in the UFC right now, is going to get a crack at Volkanovski's crown this year, probably. We interviewed him with his dad, and half the podcast was talking about father and son shit, and it was beautiful. Yeah. It was awesome. Like, we talked to Greg and Shelley at Dragon Talk, and half the podcast talking about them being parents, and how their kids the best thing they like about D&D is having flatulence powers out of their
and snacks and
So I think that's our through line, but it is definitely more food for thought to emphasize that, to really make that the statement,
Go for it. I think I know what Dave's going to say.
Suggestion?
Go for it. I think I know what Dave's going to say. Go for it.
Your through line is forming and strengthening human connections.
Nice.
That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say.
Let me ask you this: what do you think about between generations or amongst generations, or is it
There's no wrong answer. It is what you say it is. You know what I mean?
Dave, just tell us the right answer. Jesus Christ, Dave, come on, man. Leaving us on the hook out here.
Hey, but because generations is completely valid. That is if that's what resonates, it's just between people in general. If that's what resonates, it's or something completely different. Again, there's not a right.
No. Please continue. Please continue.
It's a speech that I often give is 10 years ago on the short end, 20 years ago on the high end. All entertainment was controlled by about 75 people. And I don't mean that in some predatory, conspiratorial way. I mean, if you didn't get a nod from this casting agent, if this director didn't choose you, it's just you weren't going to have a career. You just weren't. The internet democratized all of that. The internet did away with all of that and gave everybody an opportunity to find their moment in the sun. The problem now is being heard above the noise and being heard above the chaff.
Yeah.
Because while you're free to sing your song, literally so is everybody else. So that's why this clarity is important. To the thing that you were saying about the funnel, if you're not familiar with the concept, dear viewer, of 1,000 loyal fans, Google it. But the simplified thing is you only need about 1,000 people that are going to support you in anything that you do.
Yeah.
And, that are going to consume your content, that are going to buy the things you can put out, and you can build a career off of that. You don't need tens of thousands and millions of people to do the thing. The last thing I would say, because I don't want to gobble all of our time here, is I don't think of myself as having competition. I was very fortunate that very early in my formative years, again in the early 2000s, when Vince McMahon bought WCW, I watched an interview with Vinnie Mac, and someone said to him, well, what are you going to do now that you don't have any competition? And he said, oh, I have competition. My competition is everything else a person could be doing.
Yeah.
They could watch football. They could read a book. They could go for a walk. They could have dinner with their family. I still have to create an experience that is going to make a human being stop what they're doing and pay attention to my product, which is the WWE. Back to what I was saying before, that attention is the only commodity. When I think we as creators need to be very mindful of something that I think people often lose track of, that when we are asking people to give us their time, we are literally asking them to give us a piece of their life that they will never get back again. So I'm not competing. I mean, it just so happens I'm friends with all the people in this space, but I'm not competing with Mercer or Brennan or Bria. They're all friends of mine. I want to see them win. There's room for everybody. But I am competing with literally everything a human being could be doing. And I have to, do something that is going to get enough of their attention that they're going to want to pay attention, but also be respectful and honor the fact that they are giving me a piece of themselves that they will never get back. So I try my best to not put up, I mean, people always like, you tweet so much, and I'm like, yeah, because I enjoy it, but to the best of my ability, I'm never putting out fluff. I'm never, ever, ever saying, well, the algorithm rewards you for tweeting 4 times an hour, so I have to tweet again. Never. If I'm saying a thing, I'm saying that thing because I think somebody wants to see that thing. And I think when you approach this medium because I see lots of people that are like, well, we're going to do another stream. And I'm like, why? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, save everybody some time. You know, you do a stream because there's a story you have to tell, because there's a journey you want to take people on. And sometimes there's a business reason, of course, that you're like, well, Twitch needs us to stream a certain number of hours, so there is that component. But you still need to look at it as like, okay, I must go on stage tonight. What is the absolute best thing I can bring on stage tonight? And your best is going to look different, day to day. It's by no means is every time I'm on camera an absolute scorcher. Actually, let's be honest, it is an absolute scorcher every time I'm on camera. But, it is not whether or not you hit the home run. It is your intent to swing, Always swing. Don't ever try and bunt. Swing. Yeah, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Wow. Can I just say, that is so inspirational. Like, I think as well, the whole, and dude, you just mentioned, giving someone your time is giving them a piece of your life. Thank you for taking the time in your life to come and talk to, Tom and I, and it's honestly it's so refreshing to look at it in that way and to think about it like that. And I just appreciate you, man, coming and sharing your knowledge with us. And I feel like I'm a fucking better person for listening to some of this shit for sure. No, I just appreciate you, dude. And I think from us on our end, we have just been from afar, spectating and loving, your career. I've watched your Vampire the Masquerade series, and I very much enjoyed that. Your portrayal was incredible, and I really, really enjoyed that. And
shout out to Clean Ventru. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I just really, really like have appreciated you from afar. So just thank you, man. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk to you today and have a bit of your life. And honestly, I'm not going to forget it. And I hope others don't as well, because it's awesome.
Hey,
So thank you.
I appreciate that, and I gotta say, Tom, you strike me as the kind of guy that has probably said this out loud, but a lot of times I know when you're dealing with kids, they can't hear it from their parents, they have to hear it from someone else. Bodie,
Nice
man,
one.
I'm telling you, you have no idea how much joy he is getting from having this time and this experience with you. And I gotta be careful because I don't want to get emotional. I lost my dad recently, and I miss him so much, and I'm glad that you guys have this, and hold on to it because it's important.
Hey, dude.
Hey, man.
Hey, we appreciate that, and condolences to you.
Yeah, big condolences. A reach out, big hug right now, man. Because you know that's a big part of why we do this. There are no promises in life. There are no promises, and the things that we cherish most can be taken away at any time. And this is really a key to why we do this, because we've had, hey, man.
Yeah.
What you're doing right now is conveying how much you loved that man in your life.
And dude, and we appreciate you being vulnerable with us, man. And I hope you know that we feel that pain, dude. Tom and I have both lost people, and that's why building relationships, building connectivity, that's what we're all about, and that's why we're here with you, dude. And we love you, and you are in a safe space, dude. We love you. You're a fucking legend, and we appreciate you expressing that. And I'm so sorry to hear that, dude, because out of everyone in my life, you know, and don't get me wrong, like me and my mom have an incredible relationship. My partner, you know, there's something here with your father, and you know, man to man, you know, father to son. There's something there that's hard to replicate with any other person on the planet. So I fully feel that, and just know that we fucking love you, dude. We fully love you, and yeah, those
I
emotions
appreciate
are valid
that.
terms.
I love you guys too. And again, dear viewer, call your parents. I realize a lot of people, I mean, if it's safe, of course. I know some people have twisted, messed up relationships with their family and stuff, but I'm like, life is short and it's shorter than you think, you know? So tell people how you feel.
Yeah. 100%. And Dave, thank you so much for just taking the time to do this, being so vulnerable, opening up with us, being the absolute amazing influence on everyone that we have all grown to know you to be. And you continue to be in this moment, expressing yourself, being a leader for young men to express themselves publicly, be vulnerable, be open. This is what all of this is about, dude. So thank you for being one of my role models in life. And thank you for coming on. Is there anything that you want to say? Because I don't want to keep you crying and hitting you with all this stuff. So anything that you want to get out there, anything that you're working on at the moment, and also anything you just want to say to the people, man. Anything you got to get out there to the people.
Well, you know, I live in NDAville, so can't always talk about every little thing. Do take a look at 14-day DM, 14-day player, 14-day writer. They're all pinned at the top of my Twitter, which is at bdavewalters. Undisputed Academy is the link for player and DM. I think there's a link off of that for writer. If not, it's a subdomain, 14-day writer. For all of those things, I just said I will take years off of your process of trying to hone your skills in GoPro. I would say more than anything, the world is in a weird and scary time, but this is also the greatest time in history to be alive, and no one ever anywhere has had it better than we have it now per capita. There's opportunities that are available to you to be able to sing your unique song and tell your story, and the world needs it. The world needs you, because while I say this is the greatest time to be alive, it is also the darkest timeline, and we will get through it together.
Yes.
You know,
I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah, don't,
dude,
yeah.
that's incredible. That's exactly what I say.
Yeah, don't hold back. Be you. There's only one you. 20 billion people have walked this earth. There's only ever been and ever will be one you. So enjoy it and relish it.
Exactly. Hey, think about all the possible chances. If you think about the human genome, how many possibilities of humans exist in the world of of statistics? The percentage possibilities are billions of possibilities. and you're here alive. You are one of the lucky ones that got to actually be alive. Your human genome, your genetic makeup, your eyes, your body, your brain, it's all here. Make the most of it. And Dave, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to make the most of this hour with you and taking the time with you today. Good sir. And I'll just say, we are Homie and the Dude, the father and son TTRPG and MMA team. We're just so thankful to continue doing this with all you people out there, Dave, yourself, and you know, during these tumultuous times in our TTRPG community, know that we love you. You know, we do have a safe space on our Discord if people want to come and interact. You know, we're building a beautiful community over there. There will be a link in the description. Otherwise, guys, have a great day. Have a great freaking
Thanks, everyone.
day. We'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks, Dave.
We'll see ya.
Thank you so much for watching this podcast. We really, really hope you enjoyed. If you are interested in joining our journey as we continue here at Homie and the Dude, you can join our community on Discord, where we give out loads of behind the scenes content, share early teasers and things like that, as well as also just interact and have just a beautiful space for community members to, you know, spend time and interact with each other, which is lovely. As well as that, we also currently have our newsletter of holding. It's the best way to keep up to date with all the content that we're currently creating, anything new that we will be working on, things like new projects, new streams, all that kind of stuff. Primarily at the moment, you can get updates from our Airship Combat Kickstarter that will be coming out soon, and that is all in our newsletter of holding. Not to mention, you also get a free D&D supplement from it as well, so it's a great one. All of those links will be down in the description, so if you've got the time, check them out. Otherwise, we hope you have a really, really awesome day. Thank you so much for watching Homie and the Dude, and we'll catch you next time.